page 80. We got a lot to do today. Let's go. A lot of interesting little points and a couple of big points. Okay, on page 880, 4 lines from the top. We're still on the names of the people. So it says La'ozni mishpachas ha'ozni, La'eri mishpachas ha'eri. Now, if you look at Rashi over here, Rashi is the top line on the right column. Rashi says La'ozni. Omer ani shezeh mishpachas etzbon. This is actually a family that was named earlier that was called Etzbon. Ve'eni yodea lama lo nikras mishpachto al shmo. And I don't know why the Torah changed it over here. See, Rashi, there's a tremendous amount to learn from this Rashi. Rashi says, I don't know why the Torah changed. You're allowed to say, I don't know in life. Sometimes I don't know is the best answer. Rashi says, I don't know. Here he's called Uzni. And then over here he's called, the family previously was called Etzbon, and Etzbon is no longer called Etzbon. Now he's called Uzni. That's what Rashi says.
How did Rashi get it?
Rashi, I don't know. I think that Rashi gets it because he makes a calculation of the families that are named, and by process of elimination, he sees this family was never named. Since this family, it was named earlier, and it was not named here. And Etzbon was not named earlier, and it is named here. So it must be that Uzni and Etzbon are the same. That seems to be. But Rashi says, I don't know why the Torah changed their name. So one of the great commentaries is the Shloh HaKadosh. The Shloh says, you know why Etzbon here is called Uzni? You know why Etzbon? Well, let's say, what do the Hebrew words mean? What is an Etzba?
Finger.
An Etzba is a finger. What's an Ozen?
Ear.
An ear. What's the connection between the finger and the ear? Is the Gemara says that if a person, the Gemara says two things. Why do we have earlobes that dangle? Why do you have earlobes? The Gemara says because if you hear Lashon Hara, you should push your earlobes into your ears to block. That's what the Gemara says. Which, if nothing else works, it's not the first thing you should do, by the way. The first thing you should do, if somebody starts talking Lashon Hara, try to do something tactful. And you should say something like, either maybe we could change the subject, or blame yourself, and just say, so that's always, people always want to let you blame yourself. Just say, I've been talking about people too much recently. Maybe let's change the subject. That way you're the villain. Instead of saying, freeze, that's Lashon Hara, you sinner. That never works. All it gets is a negative reaction. So the Gemara says, and what if people insist to take your earlobes and you push them up into your ears?
Not everybody has earlobes.
Well, some have the earlobes that hang, and some have the earlobes that are more attached. But either way, figure out what to do. If it's attached, just kind of rip it out a little bit. Put it on. That's one. Number one. Number two, the Gemara then says, why are fingers shaped like pegs? That they're thicker at the base and they're narrower at the top. Now, once you're an adult, it's not as blatant. If you look at a baby, I always wonder about this Gemara, because it's really not, fingers are basically almost the same at the base as they are at the top. It's not so blatant. But when you look at a baby's fingers are very thick at the bottom and they narrow out. So that's, in other words, how we're born. We're certainly born with a much thicker base than the top. And the Gemara says, so that if you hear Lashon Hara, you could put your fingers in your ears. Or you could have double coverage. Right? Does it say in football? In football they put double coverage on dangerous receivers, right? So the ears are dangerous receivers. So sometimes you need double coverage. So you put double coverage on dangerous receivers. So here the Shloh says that's why earlier he's called Etzbon, the finger. Here he's called Uzni, the ear, and that's alluding to what the Gemara says, that the finger goes into the ear, into the ears if the person should hear Lashon Hara. Okay, page 880. Now, take a look at Pasuk Chaf Gimel. B'nei Yisachar lemishbechosam. The family of Yisachar. B'nei Yisachar lemishbechosam. See where that is? Pasuk Chaf Gimel on page 80. The family of Yisachar. Tola mishpachas ha-toloi. Lefuva mishpachas ha-puni. Now, again, what's in a name? What's in a name? What is the Torah? What's contained in the name of the Torah? So, what do we know about the tribe of Yisachar? What do you know about the tribe of Yisachar? They were the ones learning Torah. They were the ones learning Torah. Who was making the money? Zvulun. They had a Yisachar Zvulun relationship, which we even have to this day. You could contract the relationship. Rabbi, take a chumash. Take a chumash. Page 880. You could you have a, what do you call it, a Yisachar Zvulun relationship where Zvulun takes on support for Yisachar, and then they split the reward. And the support has to be such that he's making it possible for Yisachar to learn Torah. And not only that, if Zvulun is running tight on money, he has to make sure that Yisachar has his needs taken care of first. So that's called a Yisachar Zvulun relationship. It's a partnership. Now, Yisachar, they were the Torah learners. So here the Torah alludes to, and the Torah alludes to, what does it take for a person to learn Torah? Number one, tola. Tola is like the Hebrew word tola'at, which is a worm. That means that a person, number one, has to make himself humble like a worm in order to learn Torah. Torah does not go to somebody who is haughty. Torah doesn't stick to him. A person has to be humble. And by the way, if you've learned Gemara, you see that Gemara learning is very humbling. And just when you think you got life worked out, then you come across a Tosfos, and then you realize you got a ways to go. Right? In case we ever get too big-headed about how intelligent we are, just learn the next Tosfos. That's the great equalizer. So number one, a person has to be a worm, and there's a Medrash says that a worm penetrates deeply. The person learning Torah has to penetrate deeply into what he's learning. When a worm goes in it and it eats, a worm goes all the way through. A person has to be like a tola, number one. And number two, lefuva mishpachas hapuni. Puni comes from the word poneh. Poneh means to turn away. Like Kalev ben Yefuneh. What do we know about Kalev? He was the one who went against the rest of the spies. Why is he called ben Yefuneh? Yefuneh means he turned away from the plot of the spies. So Puni means that somebody who wants to master Torah has to turn away from the various pleasures and temptations of life, even things that are permissible. A person has to, you want to get good at it, it's going to require complete the commitment to learning Torah. The more, obviously, any amount of Torah person, if a person learns Torah for an hour a day, that's good too. A person works and he learns Daf Yomi Shir, that's great also. But if a person really wants to develop into a Torah scholar, it's going to require a certain amount of focus on the Torah. And when you talk about people nowadays, there are people who learn Torah 18 hours a day. That means that that's all they do. They wake up in the morning, they learn Torah, they go to davening, then they go to kollel, and they learn Torah, they come home, they eat lunch, and then they learn more Torah. They're just learning, you're learning. There's no end to it. It becomes addictive to a certain extent. It becomes, when you really get into it, it becomes addictive. But that's what it takes to master Torah. Okay, now take a look at Pasuk Memtes. Again, I'm just showing you, I'm doing this just to show you that these are names, but names also have there's a meaning to the names. On page 882 towards the bottom. 3 lines from the bottom on 882. So here it's the family of Naphtali. And it goes 3 lines from the bottom. The Yetzer Mishpachas HaYitzri, the Shilem Mishpachas HaShilemi. Now what does Yetzer sound like? Yetzer sounds like Yetzer Hara, exactly. The Yetzer Yishachas HaYitzri. That means if a person follows his Yetzer Hara, if a person follows the evil inclination, page 882, gentlemen. If a person follows the evil inclination, so at the end, what's going to happen? You're going to pay. You're going to pay. Look at the next name. L'shilem mishpachas hashilemi. You're going to have to pay the price. Shilem l'shalem. You're going to have to pay the price. So again, the Torah is alluding to that. That's all alluded to in the name. Okay, now let's go on. On page 884. So, top of page 884, the Torah talks about land distribution. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lebar. Hashem says to Moshe, La'ela techaleka oretz benachala b'mispar shebos. These are the people the land of Israel is going to be divided up into. When the Jewish people go into the land, they're going to drive out the enemy. And after they drive out the enemy, so then you got all this, the land's got to be distributed to the people of Israel. So when they distribute the land and the people of Israel, how's the land distribution? Who's going to get what? How are they going to determine who's going to get what? It's like when we cut a watermelon. So every time they cut the watermelon, I'll say, okay, I'll take some center red. Right? Nobody likes that though. You got to take the whole piece. With the near the white. Because with the middle. So that's a habit. People have told me I have a bad habit that they cut open the watermelon and I kind of dig out the middle. Right? So people take issue with that. But listen, whoever gets there first. But here you got a problem. How are we going to determine the land? Yeah. What?
According to the
that each tribe has to complete. Like.
So it's not what the Torah says. That's a machlokas, you and the Torah, right? That's not what the Torah is. Yeah, to a certain extent, you're right, because that's how it went. But how do you divide it up? Who's going to say, okay, we'll take the Golan, we'll take Yerushalayim, how is that division going to be made? So the Torah says like this, third line, Ach begoro yecholek esa oretz. The land will be divided up by drawing lots. Lishmos matos avosam yincholu. By the names of their tribes. Al pi hagorol techolek nachaloso ben ravlat. By the mouth of the gorol. Now what happened was, when they entered the land of Israel, they had a 3-step process. They wrote the names of the tribes in one box. They wrote regions. They divided up the various regions in the other box, and they put the names of the regions. Let's say north, west, east, south, whatever the regions were. And Elazar the Kohen, who was the Kohen Gadol after Aaron, he said, okay, the Nasi of Ruvain should come, stick your hands in the bucket and take out 2 lots. And he said, he's going to pull out this region with his name. And he sticks his hand into one bucket, and out comes Ruvain, and he pulls out another bucket, and out comes, now he does that 12 times in a row. That's pretty good if it was just a guess. He says this, if he says in advance, this is what he's going to pull out, and sure enough, that's what he pulls out. And then they checked with the Urim V'Tumim, he's wearing the chest plate, and it says, Al Pi HaGorol, that the Gorol itself announced it. Al Pi HaGorol, by the mouth of the Gorol. That means the Gorol talked. Like the sorting hat in Harry Potter. Where do you think they got these things from? I'm sure that she was nipping. She must have had a Jewish friend of some sort. You know, all these, what do you call it? All these things. If you ever watch the movie, I'll get to you one second. All these movies, the 10 Commandments. You know, they got stuff in the. I've seen the movie with Charlton Heston. Remember the old movie, the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. They got a lot of little stuff in there that came from little midrashim. That some, the Wizard of Oz. That's a real good one. The Wizard of Oz. How did she kill the witch? With water. Do you know that the Gemara says that a person who's subject to witchcraft, the way to stay immune from witchcraft is by standing in water. How do you like that? So it must be that when they wrote the movie, some off the derech yeshiva guy, former yeshiva guy, was involved, and the one thing he remembered was the interesting, he didn't remember a word about migu and chazaka, but what he worried, once we learned something about witchcraft, he was paying attention in shir that day. That's probably that's what I assume happened. So, and the same thing with all these things, it all comes out, it's all, so the Goro actually spoke. Now, yeah, somebody wanted to ask something. Aaron, go ahead.
Why have either the Gorah or the Urim V'Tumim? Why not just have one or the other?
Oh, that's a good question. This is all a confirmation process. And that answer, you're asking an important question, because why do it this way? Why not just distribute it yourself? Moshe Rabbeinu distributed everything else. Why not do that? Just have Moshe Rabbeinu say, or Allah say, you guys get this, you get that. The answer is this way, no complaints. In case anybody challenges it, so we have like a triple layer system over here. Like Donald Trump is going to put an end to democracy. No, he's not. No, he's not. How's he going to put an end to democracy? He's got to get through a Congress and a Senate that the United States is made up in a way that there's checks and balances. You got to put away a very dramatic way of saying we don't want him to be president. He's going to put an end to democracy. What's he going to do? He can't. He's paralyzed by the court, by the Supreme Court, and by the what do you call it? They can't put an end to democracy. Could put an end to the Democrats, so you can't put an end to democracy. So the what do you call it? Which they have this. They're going to draw these lots now. In the book of Yoshua, if you look at the book of Yoshua, so when Moshe Rabbeinu dies, Yoshua leads the Jewish people into the land of Israel, and the first thing they do is they attack the city of Jericho, and Jericho is a walled city. And God says to Yoshua before they take over Jericho, he says, listen, you're going to go in, you're going to kill all the inhabitants, and all of the gold, silver, copper, all the precious metal, nobody takes any of it. It is all to be dedicated to the Hashem service. It is what's called a cherem. There's a ban on it. Nobody's allowed to take any. Okay, So they go and they they walk around Yeshua, around Jericho one time each for the first 6 days. And then on the 7th day, they walk around 7 times and they sound the shofar and the walls fall. Well, so the Jewish people go in and they kill all the inhabitants of Jericho. Okay, then they go to a place called Ai, the next city, Ayin Yud, the Ai, and they attack the Ai with 3,000. I think it was 3,000 men, and the people of the Ai come out and they kill 36 Jews, and the Jews have to run away. And Yeshua is distraught. He says, "1 second, we were promised we're going to take the land without any casualties. What's going on over here?" And Hashem says to them, because the Jewish people broke the ban. They broke the ban. What was the ban? The ban was that there's a certain man among the Jews who took some of the property. He saw some of the stuff in Jericho with Jericho, which they were supposed to not take. And he took favor. There were certain items over there that he liked, so he took some of these items. So then Yeshua says to Hashem, okay, who was it who did it? Hashem says, hey, I'm not a fink. I'm not a snitcher. And go draw lots. Right? I'm not, which we're to learn a lesson from that, because Hashem's in control of the lots also. But there's a lesson in life, though. You don't have to be a snitcher. Don't be a tattletale, unless it's necessary to save your own skin. And you turn state's evidence, or whatever it is. But Hashem says to Yeshua, I'm not a what do you call it, I'm not a rachil, a baal lashon hara. I'm not somebody who goes around talking about, go draw lots, figure out yourself. So Yeshua draws lots. First they eliminate, they get to the tribe, to the family, and then the sub-family, and then the lots fall on Achan. So Achan says to Yeshua, I understand. If I put 2 lots, if I put your name in Elazar was the Kohen Gadol. He says, if I put your name and Elazar's name into a hat, and I draw one of them is going to come out. So what kind of lot is this? So you put everybody's names in, so it's bound to come out on one person. Maybe it come out nobody, but nobody did it. Good argument, no? You put everybody in, you're assuming somebody did it, so you put everybody's names in and then you draw lots. So Yeshua says to Achan, do me a favor. Please admit, don't cast aspersions on the lots, because the lots are going to be used to what do you call it, to divide up the land of Israel. I can't have people coming back and saying, the lots were not fair. So he says to Achan, please, admit you'll have a portion in the world to come, but admit your sin. And so Achan admits his sin, Achan admits that he took it, and then Achan is put to death. That's what it says in the Nach. Why that? Now, there are 2 questions here. First of all, did you ever read the story? There's a short story called The Lottery, a famous short story. You never read it? Did you guys ever, sorry, I should ask the question again. Did you guys ever read? That's the first one. Did you guys ever read? That's the question. And I'm not talking about audio stories now. That doesn't count as reading. Did you ever read? Okay, so there's a story called there's a story, a short story. I read this when I was a kid. I don't know why I was reading, but I read it when I was a short story, which gave me it's about this little town. Sounds like a redneck town where every year they have a lottery, and they kill one person, they stone one person to death. And that's the theme, and they feel that in the town that it's good luck for everybody stays healthy and happy, except for the person who got stoned. Everybody stays healthy and happy. It's a famous story called The Lottery. It's one of the most chilling things that gave me the heebie-jeebies for a long time. And the what do you call it? So that's also, I assume, that whoever the writer was, not a Jewish woman, but I assume that she had read scriptures and she saw the story of Achan. And that she saw that they drew lots and that they stoned Achan to death. So I'm assuming that that's where she got the idea. But the stories, if you look it up, I know that you guys could look up anything today, right? So look up The Lottery. I forgot the name of the name of the writer. Look up The Lottery. It's a very, 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 very powerful the way she writes it. In any event, there's an important lesson here. God comes to Yeshua, and Yeshua says, "Hey, why'd this happen?" And God says, "Chata Yisrael, the Jewish people have sinned." I said there's supposed to be a ban on the prop. This wasn't supposed to be a free for all where people start taking stuff. There was a ban on the booty that was available in Yericho. Somebody broke the ban, and that's why they got killed at the eye. And after they execute Achan, then God says, okay, now you can take the eye. Nothing now. Now it's going to be a cakewalk. Now nobody's going to get hurt. And they go and they conquer the eye. Question is, when God says to Yeshua, Yeshua says, what happened here? He tears his clothing. Yeshua rends his garments. He's distraught. He's the leader. He promised the Jewish people we're going. He says, what did we do this to us for? And God says, Chata Yisrael, the Jewish people have sinned. Did the Jewish people sin? One guy sinned. Why is it the Jewish people sin?
Responsibility.
They have responsibility, but you only have responsibility if you know what was going on. You're right. There's something called arvus. Arvus means we're responsible for each other. That's true, but that's only if you know what's going on. Pinchas took arvus. Pinchas took responsibility, but that's only I'm responsible. I once had an argument with a teacher. I once had a big argument with a teacher. Not a big argument, but what happened was teachers will often. I had an argument with a teacher about it. There was a theoretical argument. Then there was a practical argument with the principal. The theoretical argument with the teacher is the teachers will often, one kid does something wrong, and the kids are getting, this half of the room, these four guys are goofing around. The teacher says, okay, no recess today. So what happens? You're punishing the entire group. Why do I have to get punished? Why am I being punished? Because these clowns over here were goofing around. So the teacher said to me, because they're all responsible for each other. All the teachers all the kids are responsible for each other. So why are they responsible for each other? What could he possibly do to stop them? He wasn't even involved. No, they're all involved. Everybody isn't involved though. There are guys in the class who are goody-goodies. There are plenty of goody-goodies in class who are not involved. Why are you punishing? It's collective punishment. It's not. So he said to me, well, they have to learn responsibility for each other. So I said to this teacher, so I got an idea. You know what? From now on, since the class is a group, remember the kids have been put into a classroom randomly. You were assigned a class. I didn't choose to be with these clowns in school, or as the case may be, those guys didn't choose to be with me, whatever the case may have been. But at the end of the day, it's all random. And you're put together. He said they're all one group. So I said to the teacher, I got an idea. If the kids are a group, the teachers are also a group. So if one teacher comes late, I think all the teachers should have their salaries docked, because you're all responsible for each other. They don't like that. No, that's different. No, that's different. Only kids have to be responsible for each other, not the teachers. That's different. That no. Doesn't make any sense at all. So he said to me, okay, so what should we do? So what are you doing there? I said, I don't know. The fact that I don't know, the fact that I don't have a solution doesn't mean you should resort to a bad solution. A bad solution is not necessarily, I don't know what to do. You're the teacher. But why should this kid get punished? So then I had a problem with my son. And this was my good son. If it would have been my other son, so I would have said, this guy we're just happy he didn't end up in jail. But my other son was a little tzaddical. I mean, if he would have ended up in jail, he would have visited me. But we had what he called I had my son, the tzaddical son. So I come home. The kids used to come home for lunch. So I come home. My wife says to me, Plony's upset. My son came home for lunch. Plony's upset. So I said to him, what are you upset about? He said, because the principal said when we go back to school this afternoon, we don't get recess. So I said, why not? He said, because during the last recess, 2 kids were playing with a ball, and 2 other kids went and they burst the ball, the soccer ball. They busted the soccer ball. So he said, until he finds out who it is, nobody in our class gets recess. So I said to my son, were you involved? He goes, no, I was playing marbles or something on the other side of the building. And he's a straight kid. So I'm playing marbles on the other side. I said, do you know who is involved? He goes, yeah, the usual. He knew who I thought. He says, the usual. So I said, I said, and you weren't anywhere near there? He goes, no, I was on the other side of the building. So I called up the principal. I said to the principal, why is my son getting a punishment? His recess is being taken away. He says, because I need to find out who did it. So I said, do you want him to snitch? So he goes, no, we can't have that. So I said, would you have wanted him to use physical force to prevent those other kids from doing what they did? He said, no, that we certainly can't have in the school. So I said, so you don't want him to snitch, and there's nothing he could have done, and he wasn't involved, so why is he being punished? So there's silence on the other end of the phone. And he says, okay, just tell him to talk to me when he comes back to school. So by the time he got back to school, the principal already figured out who did it, so they didn't have recess taken away. But you understand the lie, why is he being punished? So you may as well punish the teachers. Punish the teacher. If the teacher can't control the kids in the corner, so why do you expect the other kids in the classroom to control? Okay, good. I got that off my chest. Now, that's so what happened over here? What happened over here? Chata Yisrael, the Jewish people have sinned, but Israel, I didn't even know who did it. Why am I responsible? So Rav Dessler says a very important rule over here. If you have, for example, let's say you have a chain and the chain is pulled taut. And then one of the rungs in the middle eventually gets loose. Why is it getting loose? It means the rest of the chain got a little looser. The whole thing, if this rung sinks, not loose, it went down a little, it was pulled taut. It was like this. And then it starts sagging in the middle. Why is it sagging in the middle? Because at the ends it also got loose. That means if one Jew, we all affect each other at a neshama level. If one Jew could eat pork, that means that all the other Jews are loosening in their commitment to not eating pork. Doesn't mean they did. It's not as serious to them. If an Achan could come along, if one Jew could come along and commit that sin, that means the commitment along the rest of the chain isn't the commitment that it should be. Therefore, it's Chata Yisrael, the entire Jewish people have said. That's the responsibility we have. If we keep ourselves strong, if we see Jews who are very, very weak, that means we're weak ourselves. We may not be as weak as that, but isn't there something about this chain is only as strong as the weakest link or something? Is that how it goes? Something like WikiLeaks or something? Something chain. So if we're only as strong, but we're all on the chain. So if this is sagging, that means the rest of us have loosened up. That's why Achan gets punished. That's why the Jewish people are taking the task for one Jew who's not. If you have the ability to stop somebody, and the responsibility, and he needs to be stopped, then you certainly have to do it physically if you have that ability. Okay. Well, you're probably right what you said earlier, by the way. The way the land was distributed also has to do with whatever the roles of the tribes are. But it's distributed by the lot, by drawing the lots. Okay.
Rabbi, good question.
Yeah.
Why was the guy who was put to death, why wasn't he one of the 36 who died?
Because he didn't go to war.
Okay.
He didn't go to war.
So he just scavenged.
He scavenged, he stayed back, and then they went to war, and then they got killed.
Huh? He said that 36 were lost
And when they attacked the eye.
when they attacked.
Yeah, the whole Jewish people are taking the task. Okay, let's take. I want to go on. This is extremely important. This is the main point I want to get to today. Take a look at Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Aleph, 27:1. Okay, the land's going to be distributed. Now, this is a major idea over here. Vatikravna, top of page 886. Vatikravna benos Zelophehad ben Chefer, ben Gilad, ben Machir, ben Menashe. The daughters of Zelophehad approached Mishpachas Menashe ben Yosef. Ve'elish Shmos benosov, and these are the names of the daughters. Machla, Noah, Vechaglo, Milka, Vesirza. 5 daughters. V'talmodan lifnei Moshe v'lifnei Elazar HaKohen. They stand before Moshe and Elazar v'lifnei HaNesim v'chol ha'ida Pesach ha'omed leimor. They have a complaint. Avinu meis b'midbar. Our father died in the desert. According to one opinion, he was the one who violated Shabbos. Remember the Jews, there was one Jew who broke Shabbos, and they say that it was Zelophehad. That's one opinion. And he did it to teach the Jewish people the severity of Shabbos. He wasn't one of the Korach rebels. He wasn't in that group. He died, but he wasn't in the Korach rebellion. He died of his own sin. Uvanim lo hayulo. He had no sons. So Zelophehad had no sons. And the first lesson you learn over here is a very major. Imagine, what was this man Zelophehad? He had his first child is born. It's a daughter. Mazel tov, make a bracha. Every man, not only every man, every woman wants a son. The Gemara says even women want a son because they know that their husband will be happier. This is a fact. This is not a Jewish thing. This is a world thing. Every father in the world who has a child, certainly the first child, wants a boy. That's a fact. Girls are good, but we want a boy. That is a fact. A goy wants a boy. Right? A guy comes into the bar, he says, hey, he's handing out cigars. You know, my wife just had a boy. Right? And a lot of hard back slapping over there, handing out cigars, probably a couple of good drinks, a new truck driver in the world, right? And then and everybody's happy, right? A guy comes in, he asks, hey guys, I had a daughter. Congratulations, Roy. And on to, and they continue shooting pool or throwing darts at each other, or whatever they're doing. At the end of the day, okay, so imagine this guy Zelophehad, he has a daughter. And then his wife gets pregnant again, and he has a daughter. Mazel tov, get an aliyah, you name her at the Torah, Chaglo Noah, hey, beautiful name, Mazel tov, okay. Then And by the way, I want to tell you something. I saw this myself. My wife was once in the hospital for extended period. In one of the pregnancies, she had a severe complication. She had to be in the maternity ward. It's the only happy ward in the hospital. She had to be in the maternity ward. And so on a regular basis in the maternity ward, the nurses would be yelling out, because you got all these women some women who are in the ward, some women who are coming in to give birth. And all of a sudden the nurses would yell down the hall, especially when they were changing shifts. So one nurse comes on and the other nurse says to her, oh yeah, Goldstein had a boy. She gives her a report for what happened in the course of the night, the people who gave birth. She said, Goldstein had a boy, Cohen had a girl, that sort of thing. I'm telling you, I saw this or that. She would say, Goldstein had a boy, and she'd go, Mazel Tov! These are women talking to each other. She says, oh yeah, Cohen's had a girl, Mazel Tov. Right? Levin's had twin boys, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. What do you call it? Goldman had twin girls, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. I saw the women doing this. And I saw it with my own kids. You're sitting in a doctor's office holding a baby, an infant. And the lady say, there's some 45-year-old, 50-year-old lady saying, oh, shalom, Ben shalom, especially he's wearing blue. And she's all over him. And if it's a girl, she's like, shalom. And go right back to her book. It was unbelievable. It was blatant. I'm not making this up. But somebody once said, when you see two women hugging each other, it reminds him of two prize fighters shaking hands before the fight. A profound line. So that's what he said. Think about that. I read it somewhere. Whatever. That was the kind of, with the boys, it was, okay, so now he has a third daughter. His wife's pregnant. Doctor comes out of the room, Mazel Tov, a girl. Mazel Tov, right? Then a fourth one, then a fifth one. How do you think Zelophehad feels?
Terrible.
5 boys. He doesn't feel terrible. Doesn't feel terrible. Pretty like a boy. I know somebody had 10 daughters. 10 daughters. And then he had a son. This guy was walking the streets of the neighborhood. It was in my neighborhood. 10 daughters. Then he had a son. He was walking the streets of the neighborhood no matter who he saw. I had a boy, no matter who he saw. Friends, strangers, Arabs, street cleaners, it didn't matter. Whoever he saw, I had a boy. 10 daughters, but they finally had a son. So now Zelophehad, put yourself in his position. This is a very important life lesson. Because here's a man, there's a level of disappointment here. He wants a son. He wants to have a son. And you know what happens? Had he had a son, his name would never have been put in the Torah for eternity. As a result of not having a son, these girls come to Moshe Rabbeinu and they say, hold on a second, you're distributing the land. Now the land goes to the men. Now what's our status? And they come up with a very good Gemara argument. They say, if we count, so then we should get a portion also, because we don't have any sons. And if we don't count, then our mother should have yibum, because it's if we're not existing. Oh, see that. And then Rashi says later on, Chakmoniosa, they were smart. They were smart girls, sharp girls. In other words, they weren't coming because of feminism. Oh, it's not fair. Why don't only the men get the land? Right? It wasn't a feminist correct. They would come on. We think we should also be allowed to learn Gemara. Right? We also want to have an aliyah. They give you an aliyah, build steps, and you go up. Just put your kitchen on a higher level. That's all. Make an aliyah. Go ahead. That's okay. We only speak truth. It wasn't a bunch of feminists. They're coming because they have a legitimate right. What they're saying is, if we don't get land, our father's name goes lost. Our father's family, the land due to our family goes lost. It was such a legitimate gripe. Look what they say to Moshe Rabbeinu. Lama yigor Hashem avinu mitoch mishpachto. Why should our father's name go lost? Ki ein lo ben. He doesn't have a son. Tana lanu achuza b'sochach evin. Give us a portion. Vayakrev Moshe es mishpaton lifnei Hashem. Moshe brings their judgment to get before God. Why is there a big nun? Mishpaton. Moshe brings their judgment before God. There are different explanations. The big nun, remember the Gemara says there are 50 gates of wisdom. Moshe Rabbeinu was only able to access 49. He has a 50th gate of wisdom, whatever that means, that was not given. Moshe, this is a biggie. I got to appeal to God for this one. What do we do in this situation? Now, the truth is there's an opinion Moshe Rabbeinu knew, but he felt that he has some sort of personal bias here. Because they said, our father was not involved in the Korach rebellion. You know that the halacha is if you bribe a judge verbally, he has to take himself off the case? A judge has to be able to decide if I've just been bribed. You walk up to the judge and say, hey, I saw you on the back nine. Boy, you were hitting some good shots over there on the approach. And that nothing a judge likes to hear more than that. And then now he's got a trial. Forget this. This guy's going to win. That's better than money. Tell the judge how good his golf game is. So Moshe Rabbeinu feels, what did they say? They said, our father died, but he wasn't involved in the Korach rebellion. Oh, he wasn't against Moshe Rabbeinu feels, he wasn't against me. Maybe that tilts my judgment here. I can't maintain my objectivity. I got to ask God. That's what the commentaries say. Okay. There's a life lesson here. Listen to this medrash. Right before this, the Torah had said, when does this take place? Take a look at Rashi. Take a look at Rashi. Where is it? Is it the previous one? Oh yeah, here we go. Take a look at Rashi. Uve'ela, on the previous page, on 884, the last Rashi on the page, left column. Uve'ela lo haya ish. There was no man who, the Rashi is addressing, the Torah says there was no man among the people going into the land who, because they had all died in the desert. So there, when Moshe Rabbeinu in the previous section was distributing the land, it was to everybody born subsequently. The people, the generation of the desert had all died out. That was the decree that with the spies, none of them are going into the land of Israel. So Rashi says like this. Uve'ela lo haya ish. There was no man alive at this time that's going to have land distributed to him. Says Rashi, Aval ha'anoshim lo nigzer gzeras hameraglim. The women were not included in the decree of the spies. Lefi she'ein hayu mechabevos es haaretz. They loved the land. Ha'anoshim omrim. The men said, Nitna rosh v'nashuva mitzrayim. The men had said earlier, let's go back to Egypt. By the spies. When the spies came back, they spooked everybody. The men said, let's head back to Egypt. They weren't interested in the land of Israel. V'hanoshim omros tenolanu achuza. Yet here come these women and they say, we want a portion in the land of Israel. They love the land of Israel. L'chein nisbecha parshas benos Zelophehad. That's why this section is written next to the previous section of land distribution. Because the women, they did not want to go. What's the lesson here? There's a medrash that says like this. Listen carefully. And this applies to all of us. The Medrash says, in any generation, when a person goes against the flow, like Noach, who went against the people of the flood, Avram Avinu, who went against the people of Sodom, of his generation, the pagans, and he was a monotheist, Lot, even Lot, who was no tzaddik, yet he went against the values of Sodom. He took in the angels to host them, which was against the law in Sodom. A person who goes against the generation gets reward kineged kulam. What everybody else in the generation should have had, he gets it all. And these girls go against the flow. They get the reward for everybody. Whatever that reward is and how much it is. The lesson is that when you go against the flow, when a person goes against the flow, so then a person is going to be rewarded not just for what you've done, but you get for the subjective difficulty. That means if we live in a generation where the values of the world are corrupt, something went off, the values of the world are corrupt, and we're willing to go against the values of the world, it's not just, if we were raised in Mea Shorim, 7th generation Yerushalmers, or if we were raised in Bnei Brak, and the worst thing we ever did in our life is daven Shemona Esrei too fast. That's what. But when we're raised, we come from our society, and a person goes against the pressures that a person has, especially family pressures, societal pressures, values of the society. So the reward is out of proportion. It's not out of proportion. Sorry, it's proportional to the difficulty. So what you guys have done to go against or whatever has been mitigating against you, so you get tremendous reward for that. To pull yourself up against the pressures. It's not. Where do we see that? Here are a bunch of girls who are willing to go against the prevailing attitude, and these are girls, and they're willing to go against the prevailing attitude. So the reward is exponential. The reward is not just 1 + 1. The reward goes this way because it includes whatever everybody else or those who should have had it, now they're going to get it all. I heard about a guy. There's a guy who's starting to become a Baal Tshuva a little bit. He puts on tefillin and he's starting to keep Shabbos. He's like a vice president of a bank. And he decides, starting tomorrow, I'm going to put on my yarmulke when I eat lunch. When I eat. I can't wear it all the time, but people are going to laugh at me. But at least I'm going to put on my yarmulke when I eat. So the next day, he makes his commitment. The next day he goes to the bank and he's got his office, with a glass, what do you call it? And he's sitting in his office and now it's 1 o'clock and he pulls out he pulls out a lunch and he's like, oh boy, I don't know, this isn't going to be as easy as I thought. I mean, people are going to see me with a yarmulke. This is going to, And so he decides, well, maybe I'll start my commitment tomorrow. And he's getting ready to eat. And also the door of the bank opens up. And one of the very wealthy patrons of the bank comes walking in. And as he walks in, he's holding a sack. And somebody bumps into him, the sack falls out of his hand, and a bunch of gold coins, rare gold coins, go scattering around on the floor of the bank. He says, without a moment's hesitation, this guy and all the other people in the bank dive down and crawl around on their bellies trying to gather up these gold coins. This guy's watching it from his office. He says, I understand. For gold coins, these people certainly don't care what anybody thinks of them. They're willing to dive down on their bellies and crawl around in their best suits or whatever they wear because it's gold coins. It's important. It's gold coins. He says, and I can't for a minute, and I'm worried what people think. So he took out his yarmulke, put on his yarmulke, and started eating. Ate his lunch. And that person has to know, there's pressure. Let's face the fact. It's hard for us. It's hard. Sometimes we feel self-conscious about it. If it's important enough, we go against the pressure. I told you about in England, they once found a bottle of wine from the time of Napoleon. I told you about that? They found a bottle of wine that had been around time. It was like a 250-year-old bottle of wine. So there's going to be a grand opening. They're going to open this bottle. So they invited all the lords and ladies in their tuxedos and in their fancy evening gowns. And they're all getting ready with their little goblets. They're all going to have a taste of this Napoleon wine. And the waiter, in a scene out of Monty Python, the waiter's, coming in with the bottle of wine on a cushion, and he comes walking in and the freshly polished marble floor, and he slips, and down goes the bottle and it shatters. And without a moment's hesitation, all the lords and ladies dived down on the ground and started licking up to taste what this Napoleon wine tasted like. Then some of them went to the hospital with glass in their tongues, probably. But why? Because that's important. For that, you're willing to degrade yourself. For that, you don't care what people think. Because that's the Torah's lesson over here. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. We go against the flow. We go against the flow. We don't care what people think. All right, TBC.
Thank you, Rabbi.